Hello, my name is Colin Roche, and I was asked to talk to you today about recipe costing. But before we get started, any time during this presentation, please feel free to pause it, take notes, back it up, rewind it if necessary, whatever you need to do so you can really understand this material. So, before we start about recipe costing, let me ask you, why do you think we cost out recipes? Why do we do this? Because if you've ever done it before, it is a lot of work. It's tedious, there's a lot of recording in there, but, is it necessary? What do we get out of it? Well, the basic answer is so that we know how much it costs us to prepare a product. So then we can determine how much we need to charge to pay our bills. Charge for it to pay our bills and hopefully make a profit. And in the past presentations, I referred to FLOP, food, labor, overhead, and profits. And we want to make sure that we make enough so that we can get a profit out of it and not have our business fail like 80% of businesses do. So it's very important that we charge enough money. And we can't figure that out, how much to charge, unless we know how much it costs. So that's why we do that. We need to charge enough to cover the flop. So let's take a look at a basic recipe costing template. Now, this is just a basic one, and I'm going to go through this and we'll talk about some examples here. Here you have a cost, and you're going to start with writing in the basic information from your recipe into this costing sheet. So on each line, we would enter in the recipe amount of each ingredient, the amount and the unit, okay, all the way through. So let's say we have 8 ounces, okay, of our ingredient. We'll pick honeydew melon. Let's pretend we're making a fruit salad. In each line, you're going to have a different fruit: honeydew melon, cantaloupe, kiwi, whatever happens to be in your recipe. And you're going to list them. So for my recipe, it says we need 8 ounces ready-to-eat honeydew melon. So we put that in there, 8 ounces. Okay. Now the 2 as purchased columns tell us how much we actually need to purchase in order to have enough for the recipe quantity. So for example, let's say that you have a recipe that asks for 8 ounces of honeydew melon. Okay. The 8 ounces is our edible yield. All right, edible yield. That means what we can eat. There's no waste. It's our ready to go, ready to serve, right? Or the amount, it's the amount needed of usable product with no waste. Okay? However, we know that honeydew melon are usually not purchased in a ready-to-eat format. They can be. It costs you more money because there's labor built in if it's already trimmed out, like you might see at the supermarket, a cup of already cubed up melon. Okay, but normally it doesn't come that way when you're buying it in bulk from a vendor, but rather it comes in with a non-edible rind around them and a bunch of seeds in the center. Okay, and this is all known as waste. As you see here in the picture, all of that, we don't eat the outside, we don't eat the seeds, we take that out. But we had to purchase that melon, okay, with these things on it. Now, the book of yields, okay, tells us that a whole watermelon, a whole honeydew melon, on average, has a 57.5% yield. That means that for each melon purchased, we can expect about 42.5% waste. All right, almost half. Half of what we purchase is going to go in the trash. Half of it we're going to be able to serve to our customers. Big deal. What does that mean? Well, that means that if we only purchase the amount stated in our recipe, in this case 8 ounces, we would run short after we removed all of the waste. We need to compensate for that waste and purchase extra of our product. So using the 57.5% yield, which the book of yields told us, we're going to put that into our triangle and call that our rate. And then the 8 ounces needed, which is our part or our portion, if you remember the solving triangle, the PBR triangle. Okay, we can use this triangle to figure out the base or the whole by dividing the two. Okay, it's at the top, one's at the bottom, so we divide 8 divided by 57.5% tells us that we need 13.91 ounces. Okay, so we need to purchase 13.91 ounces because we're going to trim up 43%, 42.5%, and throw it away, leaving us with 57% usable, which is our 8 ounces. Okay? So for every 8 ounces usable, we've got to buy 13.91 as purchased amount. So now, next we would write in how much it costs to purchase honeydew melons. You'll see over there on the next 2 columns. Now, where do we get this number from? Well, from our vendor invoice. Okay, just as it tells us there, which is a number that's constantly in flux and changing. Okay, there's a drought somewhere, it's in the summer, it's in the winter, seasonality, all of these things come into play. So produce is always going up and down in prices. But we would call our vendor on a bid sheet or whatever it is for today, and we would find out. Now, a vendor also sells a product in a variety of ways, known as pack size. For example, you wouldn't order a 6-ounce steak, as it most likely is sold by the pound. So you'd have to buy pounds. Another example would be a can of soda. You don't call up your vendor and order 1 can of soda, since it's packed by the case of 24 cans. So this is the pack size. Because of this, we most likely will need to do some converting. Okay, you need to do some converting. What we're going to buy it for, what we're going to sell it for. Now your instructor may have given you an exercise titled Cheney Brother Practice Sheet. All right, and this one will go through it and it'll get you in the habit of figuring out what items are packed by and what they cost, and then converting them down to an ounce or other usable amount. So first step is to write in the price and unit of the product desired from the vendor's invoice. In this example, we're buying honeydew melons. So let's convert that to ounces. So in the case of honeydew melon, it is sold by the pound with, let's make up today's price of $2.99 per pound. Okay, so that's how you buy it. All right, but we want it in ounces because that's the way our recipe is. So you can see our recipe amount. How much does it cost us for per ounce of honeydew melon? Well, because our recipe calls for ounces, we would take the $2.99, the price per pound, and divide it by 16 to get the price per ounce, which comes out to be on a calculator 0.1868 or 19 cents per ounce. All right, because we round up or we round down based on the thousandths place. Okay, so we're talking money here. So if it comes out to be 0.186, 6 is above 5, so we'll take the 0.18, which is 18 cents, and we'll round it up to 19 cents. If it had been 0.184, 329, whatever, we would have rounded down because it's less than 5. So it would have been just 18 cents because when it's talking money. Now, when you're talking with the Internal Revenue Service and you're looking at your books, they don't care which way you do it, as long as you do it the same way all the time. Whether it's in your favor or when you're paying bills in someone else's favor, you need to round the same way. So this is a good exercise to do it since we're talking cents, just to round to the hundredths place. Okay, so now we know it costs us 19 cents today per ounce, which is the same as $2.99 per pound for honeydew melon. But how much does it cost us? Okay, well, since we need to purchase 13.91 ounces of melon in order to get our 8 ounces of usable melon for our recipe, we need to multiply 0.19, which is our cents per ounce, by 13.91 ounces to get our total ingredient cost for the honeydew melon of $2.64. Okay, see how this is? We're not using it by our 8 ounces because that's not factoring in waste. We need to do it by our as purchased amount, which is 13.91. multiplied by today's price of 19 cents an ounce, gives us $2.64 for 8 ounces of honeydew melon. Okay? Now, you would just do this for every item in your recipe, for your kiwi, for your honeydew, for your cantaloupe, for your watermelon, blueberries, whatever is in your recipe. You would do this all the way up, and then you get to the bottom, you total up your total recipe costs. All right? So that's the basic explanation on it. Now let's actually do one. So, peanut butter and jelly example. Okay? You may have had a recipe for peanut butter and jelly, and we're going to talk about that one. Let's look at a full one. Now, I also took time to label each recipe, each column in there by letters. This may help as a visual when you're doing costing. So you might have this form, which I'm going to show right here on the screen, and you can see I've converted in the recipes columns by their letters to help you kind of keep track. But if you have the peanut butter and jelly handout sheet, which is right here, go ahead and follow along. If you don't, just watch the screen and take some notes. So for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, we're making one sandwich. That's our yield, so it's not too bad here. So we need 2 slices of wheat bread, we need 2 ounces of peanut butter, and we need 1 ounce of grape jelly for each sandwich. Okay? The first 2 columns are from our recipe, just like I showed in the past example, the amount and the unit. And then what the ingredient is, wheat bread, peanut butter, and grape jelly. The 2 as purchased columns tell us how much we actually need to purchase in order to have enough for our recipe, okay, factoring any waste. For example, and for this example here, everything is 100% yield. We don't have any waste, right? We're not going to trim the bread or, leave some of the peanut butter behind. So we made it easy, 100% yield. So the recipe amount and the as purchased amount are the same. So you just see the columns, we just move those over. 2 slices at 100% is still 2 slices. There's no edible yield percentage amount there like I showed with the honeydew melon. All right, we have our vendor costs we got off our invoice, and for today's day and time, we're saying that it's $2.99 for a loaf for 24 slices of bread. It's $3.59 for a 40-ounce jar of peanut butter, and it's $2.59 for a 20-ounce jar of grape jelly. Okay, we need to then calculate our recipe costs and our individual ingredient costs. So let's go through these steps one by one with letters. All right, this will maybe make it a little bit easier to help fill in those question marks. Okay, so let's do wheat bread first. Now, just like the mise en place in a recipe or the method of production, we can follow a procedural technique to systematically complete the costing card. So step 1, as noted in that handout sheet that you may have, as well as the one that I just showed on screen, you can use these steps and using the letters on the columns of the costing sheet to help give a visual on what you need to do. So step 1, convert the units in H to be the same as the units in J. All right, so we have 24 slices. Now we have to make H the same as J. We know it's a slice. Step 2, we have I. What is the cost per slice, okay, of whole wheat bread? Well, you can see the formulas right there. You take G, $2.99, and divide it by H, which is 24 slices. So as you see here on the screen, $2.99 divided by 24 equals 0.12458833, or rounded 12 cents, okay, because the 4 is below 5. All right, step 3 is to get K. We're going to take I, which we just determined is 12 cents, and we're going to multiply it by D, how many we need for the recipe, and that's 2. So you take your 0.1245833, or 12, multiplied by 2, it's going to give us 25 cents, because we leave it right in the calculator and it factors it in. Now you'd repeat this on all recipe items have been converted, and column I and K are all totally filled in throughout the whole thing. So you do that for your grape jelly, okay, and you do that for The next one there is your peanut butter. Okay, so $2 a slice for wheat bread gives us 25 cents, 9 cents for our peanut butter, and we need 2 ounces of that, so that gives us 18 cents. And then 13 cents for an ounce of grape jelly, that gives us 13. And then we total them all up. So you'll see there, step 5, to get L, column K is totaled, 56 cents. The next one is Q factor, and that's M. To get M, it's L, 56 cents, multiplied by our Q factor. Now, what is Q factor? It's a percentage that's usually assigned by management, and it doesn't change. It's a percentage that you use on all of your recipe cost cards for that establishment. Okay? It stands for unquantifiable amount, the amounts that are too small to factor in, like the salt and pepper on a table, or the ketchup packets, or whatever you happen to give away. You paid for them, but they're not really quantifiable because they're not going to be used the same in every recipe. But you still want to have a factor in there for them. Now, this percentage usually runs anywhere from 0 to about 10%. 10% being for very high-end restaurants. Maybe they have a really imported sea salt or something very expensive they use and they want to capture. All the way down to like fast foods, which could be 0. This percentage in an assignment in class would be determined by your instructor, and they would tell you what that is, maybe 3 or 5%. In this example, I just left it at 0. So 0 times 56 is 0. We add them up, which is the next step there. Step 7 for N is to add L and M together, and we're still going to have 56 cents. Okay? Then you need to find out how much it costs for a portion, because this recipe cost is the amount for everything in that recipe, that batch. You know, maybe you're making a cookie dough, and the batch may cost you $20 to make this batch, but how much does it cost for one cookie? You need to take that batch amount and divide by the number of portions, or the standard yield. You need to figure out what it costs for one cookie, or one piece of cake, or one chicken breast. In this case, if you look up to the top right corner, the yield is 1 sandwich, so the number stays the same. The recipe is 56 cents divided by 1. As you'll see at the bottom, step 8, N divided by the standard yield, which is 1, still gives us 56 cents. Okay, you with me? Now we're going to move further down into a recipe cost card. All right, so we move down here, and we have at the top is 56 cents. That's what it costs us for one peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, now we have a few other columns there, costs. This is where you would put in any additional items that's going to be served on the plate with this item that you just made to give us the total plate cost, which is S. So what we'll do is we'll take O, as it says there in step 9, plus P plus Q plus R, and that would give us S, the total plate cost. Let's pretend that 56 cents up there is for a chicken breast. Okay, well, maybe on the plate we're going to serve it with a baked potato, some garden vegetables, and maybe a sauce. So those 3 columns, we would put baked potato, vegetable of the day, red wine sauce, and we put in the costs. Where do we get that from? A separate cost sheet. We would cost those out separately. So we know baked potato costs us 10 cents. We'd put a 10 there. So we would put those into this recipe so that we know our total plate cost with the chicken and the potato and the veg and the sauce. We're going to get a price for that because that's the way we're selling it. In this case, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, we don't have anything else on the plate, so we would leave those blank, and the 56 cents of the portion cost would be the same for the total plate cost. If it was just a dessert, you might have the price for cheesecake, and then on these lines you might have whipped cream, raspberry coulis, mint leaf, something else you're going to put on the plates to give you the total cost. All right, so we're at total plate cost, which is S, and now we're going to go to step number 10, which is to get T. T is the desired cost percentage. Where do you get that from? Well, you get that from management. It is the budgeted amount. You may work for a place that says we run a 30% food cost. Well, that's what that is, 0.30 or 30%. Or they might say a 25 or a 45. Whatever that is, that's always in there. And that's the amount you need to make minimum budget. Okay, you can sell it for more, and sometimes you might even sell the items for less, but your average food cost, when you add up at the end of the month, at the end of the year, needs to hit that or better, or less, better for you in profits, than that cost. You didn't make budget. Okay, so in this case, it's being 30% food cost. We can use that number with the total plate cost to get our preliminary selling price. Using your triangle, you'll see it over there on the left. Okay, you put your 56 as the portion at the top of the triangle. You put your 30%, okay, in there. That actually should be on the right side because it's a PBR triangle. And because they're above, you divide them, and you will get your $1.87. And that's U. And U is step 11. S divided by T gives us $1.87. Now this is our preliminary selling price. Have you ever seen anything on a menu for $1.87? I don't think so, right? It would be listed that way. It'd be $1.95, $1.99, $1.75 maybe. Not that's an odd number. But that's okay because that's the preliminary selling price. You'd usually round up for your actual selling price. But this actual selling price, which is down below, is usually determined by market forces, by supply and demand. Maybe you go out and do some benchmarking and find out what your competitors, your competition is selling that item for, and then you put your price somewhere in that area. Okay, the demographics of your customer, you would find out what you want to sell it for. But that preliminary selling price, okay, is $1.87, and that's the minimum that you must get. Okay, the minimum you must get to make budget. Now, let's say the market says, our sandwiches are pretty good. We can get $2.99 for them. So you plug that in, your actual selling price. Now that becomes our base or our whole. So if you see on the triangle on the screen, you can put the $2.99 in there. We know it costs us 56 cents. That's our portion. They're above, so we divide. So as you'll see there on step 13, W is S divided by V. We divide it, and we now know if we sold it at $2.99, our actual food cost would be 18.7%, much lower than our 30% budgeted food costs. So we're going to make money on this, and it's going to lower our overall food costs. Okay, and you can see that there it says the total plate cost is the cost that will not change when discussing how to determine preliminary selling price. Therefore, when you use the triangle to explain how to find the answers, S will always be the part of the equation, because that's part. That's the part of sales being 100%, and what we're going to sell it for is always the whole. Okay? Now, I hope that helped, and you would use these same steps for no matter what your recipe, no matter what your product, the same steps. Again, you may have more costs in there, more items in your recipe, but it's the same steps that you would go through. You would still use those steps as we pointed out right here that was illustrated in this example. Now, go to maybe you have a handout for the oatmeal cookie. Maybe your instructor gave you that. If not, it's right here on the screen. Okay, and you can see here the oatmeal cookie costing. The majority of the information has already been written in for you. If you were doing this from scratch with a blank cost card, you would have to use your recipe and write all this in. You'd have to go to a Cisco or Cheney Brothers or some other vendor and get all the costs and figure this out. And you've probably done this in some of your class projects, and you will do this out in the real world as well. But in this case, everything's been put in here, and look, everything has 100% yield to make it really easy, which you wouldn't find out there in the industry. It would hardly ever be 100%. So you first need to figure out the recipe costs and then the individual ingredient costs. And then you total these up, okay, and you would get your total ingredient costs. Now, I'm sure if your instructor gave you this, he's going to want you to fill this out and bring it into class so that you can review it. So go ahead and do this. You know how to do it. I do want to point out a couple of things. If you look at like molasses, that's 3 gallons. So when you're converting it, it's not just pounds to ounces. You have to know how many ounces are in a gallon. And that's why we teach that in many of the classes here at the school. So you know, right off the top of your head, 128 ounces in a gallon. So you would take the $9.99, divide it by 3 to get your price per gallon, and then divide that by 128 to get your price per ounce. Same with vanilla extract, $99 a gallon, divided by 128 to figure out how much it costs per ounce. If you happen to be doing tablespoons, you'd then divide by 2, or teaspoons, then again by 6 or by 3 for tablespoons. Look at eggs. Whole eggs, $75 for 30 dozen. Well, hopefully you know there's 12 eggs in a dozen. So you take 75 divided by 30, gives you the price per dozen, divided by 12, gives you the price per egg. Now, anytime an egg isn't specified a size, we assume it's a large egg. That's kind of the unwritten rule. If it just says egg, you're talking about a large egg. And in culinary, we say a large egg is 2 ounces. So it may vary a little bit through moisture loss and stuff, but 2 ounces is a good, easy number. And we divide up the yolk and the white to be equal portions. So of a whole large egg, 1 ounce, okay, is yolk and 1 ounce is white. You know, that's not 100% true. It works for our purposes. So here, if you wanted to find out the price per ounce, you would take the $75 divided by 30 to get the price per dozen, divide that by 12 to get the price per egg, divide that by 2 to get the price per ounce. And sometimes you may see metric in here, liters, milliliters, things grams, and then you just have to do the conversion, but it's still the same steps. And then you'll get your individual ingredient costs. Okay, and you add in your Q factor, whatever that may be, told by your instructor or set by your establishment, and you're going to calculate your recipe costs. Okay, lastly, you're going to calculate your portion costs. So you look up above, it yields 96, so you do your division to get your portion cost. Add in any other costs that happen to be on the plate you're going to serve with it to get your total plate cost. Okay, then you're going to come up with a preliminary selling price, okay, using the desired food cost that your establishment or instructor gives you, 30%, 25%. And then based on your market, supply and demand, you're going to come up with an actual selling price, second to last box down there. Put that in there, and with that, you'll be able to determine your actual food costs. Okay, so do this. If you have this sheet for your class, bring it in, and they'll review it. Okay, good luck. Thanks for watching.